or trust Joe Manchin at all in his motivations. I think he might be kind of slimy.
Yeah, I'm very curious.
Yeah, he's got this like whole houseboat situation that seems to be really smarmy. Have you heard of this? He lives on a houseboat in DC, and apparently like he has a whole bunch of like bipartisan parties on his houseboat. So I'm kind of like, how much are you really interested in tackling the hard problems of America, and how much are you interested in winning re-election in West Virginia so you can continue to party with fucking Senator so-and-so on your goddamn houseboat?
He's enjoying
Sounds
the
dope.
rock star lifestyle. What up, world? Welcome to another tasty episode of the Ameri Podcast.
Oh yeah,
Tasty indeed.
so good.
Today is Friday, July 16th, 2021, and we are recording this episode at 6:12 p.m. We got the original crew with us this evening in the virtual house.
Sans one.
-1, John Kelly, who's doing secret government stuff. I can't tell you.
Yeah.
And that may or may not be a lie.
Yeah.
I actually don't know what he's doing, but
I think he actually might literally be doing secret government stuff.
Yeah.
I think that is literally a true thing we can say.
Yeah.
-1, John Kelly. He is out doing things that are important, and his absence is excused, but we still miss you.
Desperately.
So we have with us Mr. John Anderson out in the greater Denver metro area. How are you this evening?
Good. I'm happy it's Friday.
Yeah.
Facts.
Happy Friday.
Indeed. Oh, and by the way, speaking of Friday, the 8-hour work or the 8-hour workday and 40-hour work week is a construct that we can get rid of at any point that we want to. We should thank the labor movement for the 40-hour work week, and we should also be constructing our own labor movement to get this shit down to 4 days a week. There is literal evidence that productivity is either maintained or increased in a 4-day work week as opposed to a 5-day work week. We don't need it. It's bad for everybody. Get it the fuck out of here. It's also bad for the environment. Rant over.
Yeah, I'll add a little side note to that. I've worked in a couple like restaurants. That 4-day work week is sometimes mandatory in some of the restaurants that have like higher volume and demand, and it's because you need that third day off to rest, and they know that, so they can keep like a better cycle going for their employees.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
There
Big time.
And our West Coast correspondent, Tyler Grillo. How are you this evening?
I'm doing pretty all right, pretty all right. I also want to add to this conversation, just to clarify, John was saying that the labor movement got you the 40-hour work week versus like an 80-hour work week. I just want to be clear. He wasn't saying that they like made it up from no, it's down. And also, there is quite a bit of evidence that we work now more than serfs did in the feudal days. So just let that sink in. That's fun. And
would you like to...
When we talk about like hunter-gatherers and we're like, oh, it must have been terrible then. No, actually, it sounds fucking awesome because you like hung out with people you mostly enjoyed, and you like went and found some mushrooms for 2 hours in your day, and then otherwise you shot the shit with the people that you liked around the fucking campfire. And yeah, sometimes you had to like battle a saber-toothed tiger, but it sounds way better than an 80-hour work week.
I'm so into it. I will say I need that third day off because like I need at least 2 days to party. So like the third day I'm like I'm ready to rest, but like when I have just like 2, like I don't have a choice. It's who I am.
By doing that, you're doing your duty by stimulating the economy. So thank you.
That's right. This also might be too much for this podcast, but I've been thinking about this for a few days, so I'm just going to put this out here. It doesn't need any answer right now. This is more of just a announcement of because this is the party media channel, as I'm going to call it right now, that I think that I would also like to be referred to. The West Coast correspondent is nice, but I would like to be called in the West Coast party headquarters.
Oh yes.
And I'm just putting that out there for approval of, we don't have some of our other members here, but I'm just putting this out on the Party Media channels so that those members can come back and contact us.
I don't think we have a quorum, but I do think we can accept new legislation and bylaws for consideration at the next time that we have a quorum. So
excellent.
Yeah, and I if a second is needed, I will second.
Beautiful. Thank you. All right, just want to get that on the books.
Good. Well, I'm glad that we had our board meeting, and now we can end the podcast.
Yeah, and I'm your host, Balake. also here recording with you all today. Now the podcast's over. We'll see you guys next time.
This is why we have a concept of guardrails.
I am not in the WCPP HQ. I am in the Mountain headquarters, the Mountain Party HQ.
There you go.
Not the West Coast, but the Mountain. And it's so nice to be here with you, gentlemen.
Hell yeah.
Great to be with you. What are we going to talk about tonight, Blake?
We're going to talk about a grab bag of interesting things, including how we almost lost the presidency to a coup.
The Republic.
Yeah. Back, I guess, was that in November? When
From
this all went
November
down?
to January.
Between November and January.
Yeah. So some news has hit the wire that was under wraps for a while. We'll get into it, but it is alarming. It's basically like a grab bag of how white men suck,
Wow, that is the unifying factor, isn't it, in these topics? Yeah, that's about right.
An infrastructure bill is probably the most...
the sexiest thing to talk about.
Yeah,
that's
if you
true,
sexy,
actually.
Yeah.
Also probably brought to you by a lot of white men, but yeah, that's the topic. It's on the agenda for today.
Great.
So let's start off with the coup, though, huh?
There once was a General Milley, right? Is that how you pronounce it?
He was very silly. So yeah, General Milley, who is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, so he is the highest ranking general that we have. He, you might know him from such famous events as the clearing of Lafayette Square. He followed the president at the time into the square in battle fatigues, which he later apologized for. I actually think that was fortuitous in ways, but we can talk about that later. But
he did that thing recently where he was like, yeah, no, there's a lot of racism.
Yeah, he was like, I don't know about you, but I can read Marx and not be a communist, and like it strengthens our military to understand our history, and it's not something we should be running away from. I would highly recommend it. It was a very good pushback in a very American military values kind of way, where it's like, we're not afraid of this, and we're going to go out and we're going to conquer the problem. That's whatever it is, which was great. It's one of the reasons why the military was the first part of American society to integrate in the 50s. So there has been a steady drip of reporting coming out about how close we came to a coup between November and January. General Milley feared a Reichstag moment, which is his words, which was one of the precipitating events of Hitler coming to power as a dictator. And some of the quotes in here it's from a book that is coming out. He reading from the Washington Post, if someone wanted to seize control, Milley thought they would need to gain sway over the FBI, the CIA, and the Defense Department, where Trump had already installed staunch allies. Quote, they may try, but they're not going to fucking succeed, he told some of his closest deputies, the book says. So to put that into context, that is the senior general of the United States military saying that he is actively worried about a coup and planning to stop it.
Yeah. And I think one of the main important things here is that he was stopping it because a huge thing that you need for a coup is the military.
Yes.
Right.
And there's one of the reasons why you can see a lot of people in the right wing media sphere are going after the military and going after Milley himself because they know that that's one of the last standing institutions between them and true authoritarian power. Ironically, is the United States military, which is in other countries used as the arm of oppression.
I would say that the ultimate reason why Hitler was able to pull it off was because there wasn't a single unifying force in Germany at the time. And there was like all these independent military groups. And so he kind of like got them all together. Whereas if the United States military, we're already organized like from that single source. And so like that established that hierarchy of power is already there. I think it was a lot harder to penetrate through that because it was so organized.
So I disagree that the ultimate reason, which I think was your word, that Hitler came into power. I think there were many ultimate reasons. I don't think there is.
No, the reason why like the military, why it was so easy. I meant specifically with the military.
Okay. I don't know if I fully agree with that reading of history, but I don't think we needed. It's a long time ago. And it's rather detailed, but the United States military has a strong tradition, and this is unique among militaries, at least as my awareness goes, that they swear an allegiance to the Constitution, not to an office, not to a person. And that's where Milley put out a video shortly before the election or shortly before the inauguration, one of the two, I forget which, saying the United States military, he said explicitly, the United States military swears an oath to the Constitution, not to a man, which is very interesting seeing this reporting coming out, because after the Reichstag moment, Hitler forced the military to take an oath to him personally, not to the state of Germany or the chancellorship generally or anything like that. So it seems like Milley might have had something very specific on his mind when he said that, which is interesting in retrospect. And so this is important that we process this, because I think most people are like, great, we won the presidency and we don't have to worry about this shit anymore. And it's like, no, this was a dress rehearsal.
Yeah, absolutely.
This was a planning event, and
we're gonna be worried about people. Yeah, we have to be worried about people like DeSantis, and I mean, you see a lot of this allegiance to Trump, right? Like specifically, right? And I think there's so much evidence of the authoritarianism that is rife through American culture. But I think that this is in different ways. But I think this is a really interesting one that people are so. I mean, and these are like, flag waving like Republicans who are like America, and then they're obsessed with a dude, right? And they want this one dude, and like that's not. First of all, that's not what America's about. If you ever looked at it, that was the whole idea. Was it's not about one dude. They're like, that dude was a king, and the whole point was it's not about that dude. So I would say it's
fought a revolution about it.
Yeah, there was a whole war about it. It's how we started as a country. That and slavery and colonialism. So it seems a little ridiculous, and I really appreciate also the parallels between Hitler and Nazi Germany and the moments that we're going through now. Very important, and as all of us are reading in the Party Book Club, as I'm just going to call it in this moment, Caste by Isabel Wilkerson, which everyone should read, is so good. And the three caste systems that she talks about is the Indian caste system, the Hindu caste system, Nazi Germany caste system, and the American caste system, which is based on race, but of course weaves in all of the other forms as well. But race is really the central one. And
very cool company to be in.
Yeah, exactly.
Very, very excited about being in this club.
So this book has really been great, and like, I know it, but the parallels that are drawn, that she draws in it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's fuck that. And
the cross pollination of ideas, too,
especially between Nazi Germany and the United States.
Like, that was something that I did not know in detail, and that's been a fun learning experience.
fun and quotes.
Yes.
But so this is deeply concerning, and for the future of our country as well. and it begs the question of like, well, what's coming in 2022, of course, and what's happening right now with the Democrats being in power, at least in the legislative and executive branch, and like I think that and I'd be interested because I think the authoritarianism in this whole thing rearing its head, I think challenges this a little bit. But what often in politics you see is, can a party like who is not, the opposing party, get some sort of amelioration, at least with the voting members of the other party, by doing things that help them materially, like very obviously in their lives, right? Now, that gets spun so much in our days of anti-information information and anti-information that goes around. But this infrastructure bill, I'm curious to hear what people think about it, because I think that that's one of the things that it has. So the infrastructure bill being the big piece of legislation that Biden has been working on, the Biden administration has been working on. The one thing that I think that it can go either way in these days, but the one opportunity it has is to create very obvious material benefits to people in front of their face that I hope would make people go, oh, this isn't so bad. But I know there's a lot more to it than that.
The coup attempt. I just want to point out that even though this is like news, I mean, we were all reading in between the lines, between like the rhetoric of Trump trying to get people to find issues with the voting. And I mean, up until today, even all the courts, like I think they just had a judge say no to them in Colorado court today, I think, to some Trump lawyers over some bullshit. So, I mean, like, we know that they've been trying to do this, and like we've talked about this on the pod.
Yeah.
Anderson, you mentioned you had something to say to that effect before the podcast.
Well, yeah, I think this is something that we like with a lot of the Trump presidency, it was something that was totally obvious to a lot of people who were watching. But we have this whole issue with just stating clearly what is happening.
Yeah.
There's a quote. So Jamie Raskin, who is one of the congressmen who he led the second impeachment, and his son tragically committed suicide a couple of months before that, and they wrote a really beautiful eulogy to him. I would recommend everybody go read it. Like, you will cry reading it, I promise. I did. And in that, there was this quote that's really stuck with me, where Jamie Raskin's kid quoted somebody, I forget who, that was, they live their life as if the truth was true. And that really hit me. And so, like, when we were living through this in real time, we were calling it out. I think, if I remember correctly, I said one of the people we have to watch is General Milley, and where he goes, I think, is going to be really important for the future of the Republic. And so I wish that as American citizens, individually, we just all lived a little bit more like the truth is true.
Yeah.
And that was one of those things where this was clearly a coup attempt. Clearly in real time, this was a coup attempt. It was slow motion, but it was a coup attempt. And we've spent a lot of time twisting ourselves into pretzels trying to figure out what to call it and how to process it. And you have an entire right-wing media operation calling them tourists. And we need to make sure that we call it we need to plainly speak the truth about this day. And so, I'm happy that we did, and we're going to continue to do that.
Basically, like, at what point did we stop calling a spade, right?
Yeah. And I think it's also like that thing of like, what do you think a coup looks like? What do you think it looks like? You know what I mean?
You need to be successful before you accept it.
Yeah.
Right.
If what you're looking for, if that happens, it's too late for you to stop it.
Right. That's right.
So,
and if that's the reality that you want to live in, then dude, we are fucked.
That's another thing about.
Leads us into the importance of the infrastructure bill. Like, the reason why it's it's like, oh, what is it? $1.2 trillion bipartisan bill.
So I'm gonna be a real big wet blanket pessimist on this. As we have seen since 2008, the Republicans have a very clear playbook, which is we're going to negotiate and run out the clock until the midterms and dangle bipartisanship and run it out, and then they're not going to vote for the bill, and then they're going to go campaign at the events of like the bridge opening and all that shit. Like we've literally seen that
and be like,
happen.
look what I did for you.
Look what I did for you. But they can also they can go on Fox News and say I didn't vote for it. So what they're doing, I think, is they're dangling the infrastructure bill out in front of Biden because Biden is old school Democrats, and what the Republic is burning around us, and the most important legislation that we pass is voting rights. We have to pass voting rights. We have to kill the filibuster to pass voting rights, and I am afraid that we're wasting a whole lot of time on infrastructure. Now, Biden's argument is I am tying infrastructure to voting rights, and we are not passing infrastructure if it's the only bill. The problem with that is the clock is not on his side. The clock is on Mitch McConnell's side. And so I understand the strategic calculation that Biden's making. It makes sense to me, especially if it's 1991. But I don't think it is. I don't think any of these motherfuckers are operating in good faith. And because they literally don't want the government to succeed. Like, that's why the party exists. And so it is antithetical to them for government to succeed at all. And a massive infrastructure bill would be government succeeding. So I don't think they're going to vote for it. I think they're just trying to kill time until the midterms. And they have a massive incentive to make sure nothing gets done because, as we saw in 2010, that's how they won back Congress and how we're in this whole shit show in the first place.
Yeah, I was going to say, wasting time is what they do best, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that we should just fucking railroad voting rights right down their throats and say we're the goddamn federal government, and if you don't like it, we're sending the 101st Airborne in there goddamn again, and we're going to protect individual liberty and make sure that one person gets one vote and everybody in this country gets a vote.
Well, I'm all for that, but isn't Joe Manchin blocking all that shit?
So Joe Manchin is a big problem with this. But
so so he's blocking that with the infrastructure bill, and maybe this would be a place that I could be educated, and maybe our listeners. Is it because it's so large? Do they actually need bipartisan support? Can the Democrats just unilaterally do it, or do they, because the bill is so large, the budget is so large, do they?
Are we talking about infrastructure or
infrastructure?
So for infrastructure, okay. So there's this process called budget reconciliation.
Right. This is the thing, the budget shit.
Yes. So there is and this is one of those things where Republicans have outmaneuvered Democrats for legislation that Republicans care about, which is mostly fiscal stuff.
Yeah, money. Yeah, okay.
Exactly. So like the way that they got the tax cuts through, the Trump tax cuts, is through budget reconciliation. Congress has determined, the Senate has determined that for things around money, there's only a simple 50 vote majority.
Okay.
For other things, like things that Democrats care about, like voting rights, there's a 60 vote majority.
Right.
So I believe that they will be able to finagle the infrastructure bill to make it be under budget reconciliation, which means that we would only need 50 votes plus Kamala Harris.
Right. Okay. So given that Joe Manchin is being a fucking cockblock, at least they can get the infrastructure bill through. Probably. Okay.
Yeah, but that adds a whole complexity to the entire argument I just made, because Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin seem to not want to kill the filibuster for some reason.
Yeah,
and so
even after they came out being like, "Oh, it seems like the Republicans aren't playing fair," and you're like, "Yeah, that's why we're killing the filibuster." So now you're on board, right? And they're like, "No, get nailed it. What are you talking about?"
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, well, if we kill the filibuster, then they're going to be able to pass a whole bunch of shit," and it's like, they're going to do that anyways.
Yeah. It's going to happen.
Right. And so here's the thing is, like, what are you actually worried about? Are you actually worried about them having success in passing stuff, or are you worried about like the future of America? Like, where is your fight?
Well, and there's another thing in there, which is Joe Manchin, at least publicly, is arguing this is the way to drive bipartisanship. This is the way to get better legislation that will last longer. Right. Know honestly how much I trust that argument or trust Joe Manchin at all in his motivations. I think he might be kind of slimy.
Yeah, I'm very curious.
Yeah, he's got this like whole houseboat situation that seems to be really smarmy. Have you heard of this? No. He lives on a houseboat in DC, and apparently like he has a whole bunch of like bipartisan parties on his houseboat. So I'm kind of like, how much are you really interested in tackling the hard problems of America, and how much are you interested in winning re-election in West Virginia so you can continue to party with fucking Senator so-and-so on your goddamn houseboat?
He's enjoying the rock star lifestyle. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I think we agree that the infrastructure bill ideally, hopefully, would be mostly good for Americans generally.
I think there's no argument against that.
Yeah. And speaking of the rock star lifestyle and legality of things, I wanted to mention, of course, in this conversation, the conservatorship of Britney Spears.
Yeah.
And if you all have been following this, how horrible it is. All the conspiracy theories, it's worse than everyone that they called it conspiracy theories about her. The reality is worse. She hasn't had access to her own phone for years, or her own social media. It's been all staged. She has had to work, which is for her performing when she had a 104-degree fever. Apparently her father's like a blatant alcoholic, and the way she talks about it, she's like, my body has worked so hard for my dad for so long. It's like there's a lot of creepy shit going on, and it is one of these things that, listen, South Park has its issues, but South Park called this fucking like a decade ago, basically, in their episode, that like, she has been like sacrificed to our social milieu as this person. And it's like, it's really destroyed her life. She wanted to like have another kid, and they forced her to get an IUD. They forced her to go on she was on a medication because she has some mental health issues, so she was on like some antidepressants that she thought were good for her, and they forced her to go on lithium, which the lithium, classically just like dulls you completely.
Wasn't the main character in the movie Garden State being prescribed lithium, right? Wasn't that like the whole thing?
I mean, like Kurt Cobain wrote a song called Lithium.
Yeah, like I think the whole point of that was like he was totally numb to everything, like he couldn't feel anymore.
Yeah. Exactly.
Great movie, by the way. Highly recommend it. Good feel-good movie. Classic.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Get some Zach Braff going.
Although, what's her name? Natalie Portman's character. It's not important, right? Yeah, she's a total manic pixie dream girl in that. Like, I can free you from your sad existence.
Like when they in film school talk about that caricature, it's like just watch Garden State.
You'll know.
Yeah. But yes, I mean, like, it was good to know that she was able to, I think, hire her own legal counsel and prepare her own statements and everything in the most recent case or trial that's going on with her. But it is really unfortunate and disgusting.
Yeah.
We can use a little bit more justice in the justice system, I think.
That's right. And obviously she's a celebrity, and it's like a big high profile thing, but shit like this, not conservatorship, but just the ways in which legality can be used to like actually take away people's freedoms, right? I mean,
or used arbitrarily.
Used arbitrarily, not to say anything just of the prison industrial complex in of itself, right? Like, and all of that. And dear listeners, we can't go into all the details of everything, but look about that. Also, we don't have time this podcast to talk about Haiti. I'm not well informed enough to really have a nuanced discussion of what's happening in Haiti.
Wild story,
dude.
I think we're still they're still like figuring things out. Like there's these Colombian military members that were there too.
Yeah, but a lot of U.S. There
were a couple U.S. citizens.
Yeah,
it was a U.S. or a Colombian or a Haitian-born American gentleman who was trying to install himself. Right.
I think I saw a headline about that, but I don't know enough details to talk about it. What I saw, the Daily has a good episode about this. I think it came out last week. I'd recommend it. The New York Times, the Daily, but it's they had a convoy of 50 men in moving tactically. Like someone said they were in this episode of the podcast they were watching, and it reminded them of like people, U.S. troops in Afghanistan about to go in and like capture an insurgent. They claimed that they were the DEA, the United States DEA. They were able to enter the presidential complex, shoot the president, and then exit the complex without any struggle.
Wow.
Very wild. This is, listeners, this is completely not based on fact, but I am personally waiting for Eric Prince to be somehow involved in this story.
Amazing. That makes totally fucking sense. Wow.
So we'll see if that actually ends up happening, but we are, I think, entering. So there have been stages in world history where it would be better to say that armies were mercenary armies for hire. Like literally those were just armies around, and a prince could hire them and whatever. They weren't state-based armies like we have now, the United States military. And Eric Prince is trying to constitute a private army. There's a crazy story that just came out about him trying to set up like arms manufacturing in Ukraine.
Whoa.
Like really fucking wild shit. And he's a billionaire. His sister is Betsy DeVos, and he's the Blackwater guy that committed war crimes in Iraq, and
like maybe blew up a plane, right?
Or well, they shot up a square. Is the big story?
Wasn't there some plane too? Some plane incident.
I'm not sure.
Some plane disappeared.
He's been linked to a lot of things, so I'm not sure about that one. But
so this is a guy to really watch for. But what happened in Haiti seems to have been a private action. With well-trained military personnel and equipment, and we should all be very concerned about that, because that means that is just a recipe for entropy, and the more entropy there is in the world system, the more people end up dying. So fuck all of this shit. Like nation states need to get this shit under control.
And listen, the Haiti, is in the news in the United States when like bad shit happens. And I think we can talk, there's a whole racism lens around that because it's a black country and this whole thing. But Haiti is the second oldest democracy in the Western Hemisphere, behind the United States. And are they the only successful enslaved nation to overthrow their government and like gain their own freedom?
I think that's true.
Yeah. I mean, like Haiti they have an incredible history, but they have been just sanctioned, and so many terrible things have happened to them over the years that have really destabilized them repeatedly. And this is another iteration of that. And it appears again at the hands of not people in their own country, that they were outside actors doing something.
By happenstance, we ran a natural experiment, which was the Dominican Republic and Haiti literally split an island.
Right.
If you look at the GDP curves for the Dominican Republic and Haiti, it is insane. It is one of the craziest economic graphs you will ever. Like Haiti literally is like flatline, goes down a little bit. Dominican Republic looks like a hockey stick curve.
Right.
And a lot of that has to do with A, domestic policies, and B, foreign interventions.
Yeah.
And so like that wasn't they didn't have the right crops, or they weren't, there wasn't enough natural resources. It was like, no, this was because humans made decisions.
Yeah.
And it had catastrophic consequences for an entire nation.
Yeah.
And the Western Hemisphere and colonial powers owe a lot to the nation of Haiti. And instead we are involved in private armies assassinating their president. So this is something that Americans should care about, because it happens on our doorstep, and these are the things that produce terrorists, make us less safe, make trading harder.
Right. And
this is something that is hard to see, but it really matters.
And on that note too, this wasn't like the first coup attempt in Haiti, right? There's been multiple attempts, and so it's like there's multiple attempts, and then they get worse, right? More serious. So like, what can we learn from that? I think is what we know has happened within our own country the last year.
Right. Yeah. Power vacuums, all these sort of things.
Instability leads to more instability, and instability is bad for everybody.
Well, and we've seen the coup attempts, and we've seen the insurrection attempt now. So, what's the next attempt? Is my point.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Totally.
Cool. On that note,
we'll keep it going. Stay safe out there, everybody. Less masks, but still masks sometimes. Good.
Maybe that's just vibe it out. Get vaccinated, please. Turns out it's important. And if one of you motherfuckers spins off a variant, I'm gonna be real mad. I'm gonna be real mad.
I'm going to Mexico in a couple of months, and I'm getting more vaccines. So bring it on. Let's go. More vaccines.
Yeah, I just saw that they're issuing a pandemic amongst the unvaccinated.
Interesting.
So yeah. We're entering another pandemic, but it's among those who are not vaccinated. That's where we're at right now. So it's going to be interesting,
Stay safe. Yeah. Get vaccinated.
Hey, everybody. Take care of your neighbors. Godspeed.
Yeah.